Oftentimes, when I look at a passage or a teaching of Jesus, like John 15, 1 to 11, which we've spoken about throughout this week, this image of Jesus being the vine and the vine grower, and Jesus' followers being branches who are to bear fruit, I often try to think of uh, are there scriptures or passages in the Hebrew Bible, what we call the Old Testament, that Jesus may have been alluding to or hearkening back to, that his first hearers and followers might have thought of or had in their mind. And I think in the case of Jesus saying, I am the vine, that if you look back in your Bible to the prophet Isaiah, to Isaiah chapter 5, verses 1 through 7, we have this, what's called a song of the vineyard. And this passage is what's called an allegory. It's where the things in the story represent someone or something else. And in this case, it's a song of the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel. It starts, let me sing for my beloved, my love song concerning his vineyard. So it's a prophet singing about God as the lover who has a vineyard. And he goes on to talk about the very concrete details that someone would go through in planting a vineyard, from digging it and clearing it of stones and planting it with choice vines and building a watchtower to look out for it. And he expected it to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes. And it goes on to talk about what's going to happen because the vineyard didn't bear the fruit that the vineyard owner was looking for. And in verse 5 of Isaiah 5, it says, well, what's going to happen to an unproductive, unfruitful vineyard? Well, you're going to remove its hedge, you're going to break down the wall, it's going to be turned into a waste. It's not going to be pruned or hoed, it's just going to be overgrown with thorns and briars. And then the verse of the day is chapter 5, verse 7 in Isaiah, and it says, for the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the people of Judah are his pleasant planting. He expected justice, but saw bloodshed, righteousness, but heard a cry, presumably because there was no justice, there was no righteousness in the land. So I hear this passage, and again, you hear that when a vineyard isn't pruned, that's a bad thing. And even though in John 15, when Jesus talks about unfruitful branches are going to be cut off and thrown away, and fruitful branches are going to be pruned so they bear more fruit, at least when we're being pruned by God, we know that God cares and God is still there. But we also know, just as Jesus said in John 15, that he expects fruit from his disciples. He's echoing what his Father taught him, because God expects justice and righteousness from God's people, and that includes you and me.